Oh, Jesus. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, goodness gracious. Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with morsels of a thought. Number 1440. It is Wednesday. Today we'll have some words and wisdom. Morsels of a thought are meant for you to have a great day with morsels of a thought of wisdom. And we say that knowing the right thing to do is wisdom. Not all of wisdom is just knowing what to do, but knowing the right thing to do is always called wisdom. And by definition, where am I here? Sorry. And virtue is when you actually do the right thing. Knowing the right thing to do isn't just enough. Wisdom is good. Yes, it is. But when you have to do it, that's a whole nother thing entirely. Okay, I am here. The book of virtues is up there. Virtue, we are going to try to increase in the world today. I am going to try to read without my glasses because that way I will actually see. And today we are reading, where is it? We're reading, shoot, where is it? Come on, where'd I put it? Come on. No, that's not it. It is here. No, it's not here. Oh, did I lose the page? I might have lost the page. I was going to read something, and I liked it a lot, but it might not be here. Oh, here it is. Okay, I liked it a lot, and I need to find a bookmark. Oh, my little basket of bookmarks is all up here. So, yes, sometimes my show is made for children. On Wednesdays, I will try to make it possible for younger people to see this without any censorship. I don't know why I said censorship. There's never any reason to do anything like that for my shows. But last week we read Jack and the Beanstalk, and we read another children's story that we remember very well, which I don't happen to remember off my head. But we did read two good stories that we learned when we were children. And I thought that maybe Wednesdays would be a good day to try to filter out all those evil words that hurt the brain. So we will try very hard and see if we can't start to say on YouTube that it's made for kids on Wednesdays. We will try very hard to do it. I'm only thinking. In sincere honesty. In the book of Virtues by William J. Bennett, it is a compilation of stories and what do you call them? A treasury of great moral stories, edited with commentary by William J. Bennett. And William J. Bennett was a classmate of my mom's best friends, Hazel Hadland. Retold by Warren Horton Stewart. We should love truth for its own sake, but not for our own sake, glorifying our own devotion to an abstract truth is something less than a noble pursuit, as this Chinese folktale illustrates. This is called Insincere Honesty. In the kingdom of True, I think it was True, T-S apostrophe U. I think it's True, I think, C-H-U. In the kingdom of True was a young man named Honest. His father stole a sheep, so he went and informed the magistrate, who had the guilty one arrested and was on the point of punishing him. Young Honest then asked to be allowed to bear the penalty in his father's stead. Just as it was about to be inflicted, he said to the officer, "When my father stole a sheep and I reported the theft, was I not honest? When my father was about to be punished and I offered to bear the penalty. Was I not a son honoring my father? If you punish even the honest and the filial, who is there in all the kingdom that would not be punished? When the magistrate heard this, he released the young man. When Confucius heard the story, he said, "Strange that a fellow could sell his father's good name to make a reputation for his own honesty. If that be honesty, 'twere better to be dishonest." So Confucius says. Now, the point of that is that he was being completely unfilial to report his father to the magistrate. Sure, he was putting a good, honest face to the public, but it was in shame of his father. So this really outbalances his filial piety in trying to bear the punishment for his father. It's like saying, "Look, okay, I'll take it. Oh, no, no, don't. But you see, I just depended on you. And then he gets, no, that first part will get, yeah. No, that's wrong. Okay. Self-reliance. Self-reliance may be Ralph Waldo Emerson's best-known work. Published in 1841, when the United States was still a young nation, the essay challenged Americans to know themselves, trust their instincts, and recognize their own genius. The divine sufficiency of the individual was Emerson's crusade. He called for the courage of self-trust. Man is his own star, and the soul that can render an honest and perfect man, command all light, all influence, all fate. Nothing to him falls early or too late. Our acts are our angels are, or good or ill, our fatal shadows that walk by us still. This was the epilogue to Beaumont's and Fletcher's. What? Oh, the epilogue to Beaumont and Fletcher's. This is called Honest Man's Fortune. The epilogue to Beaumont and Fletcher's Honest Man's Fortune. Where'd it go? Okay. I read the other day some verses written by an eminent painter which were original and not conventional. The soul always hears an admonition in such lines, let the subject be what it may. The sentiment they instill is of more value than any thought they may contain. To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. Speak your latent conviction. Latent means hidden. Under the surface. For the I thought I drank all my water. Speak your latent conviction, and it shall be the universal sense, for the inmost in due time becomes the outmost, and our first thought is rendered back to us by the trumpets of the last judgment. Familiar as the voice of the mind is to each, the highest merit we ascribe to Moses, Plato, and Milton is that they set at naught books and traditions and spoke not what men, but what they thought. They set at naught means they put it at zero. A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within more than the luster of the firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his thought because it is his. In every work of genius, we recognize our rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Great works of art have no more affecting lesson for us than this. They teach us to abide by our spontaneous impression with good-humored inflexibility than most when the whole cry of voices is on the other side. Else tomorrow a stranger will say with masterly good sense precisely what we have thought and felt all the time, and we shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another. There is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better, for worse as his portion, that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows that none but he knows what that is which he can do, not does he know till until he has tried. Not for nothing one face, one character, one fact makes much impression on him, and another none. This sculpture in the memory is not without pre-established harmony. The eye was placed where one ray should not the eye was placed where one ray should fall, that it might testify of that particular ray. But we but half express ourselves, and are ashamed of that divine idea which each of us represents. It may be safely trusted as proportionate and of good issues, so it be faithfully imparted, but God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. A man is relieved and gay, happy, when he has put his heart into his work and done his best. But what he has said or done otherwise shall give him no peace. It is a deliverance which does not deliver. In the attempt, his genius deserts him. No muse befriends, no invention, no hope. Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Accept the place the divine providence has found for you, the society of your contemporaries, the concoction of events. Great men have always done so, and confided themselves childlike to the genius of their age, betraying their perceptions that the absolutely trustworthy was seated at their heart, working through their hands, predominating in all their being. And we are now men and must accept in the highest mind the same transcendent destiny, and not minors and invalids in a protected corner, not cowards fleeing before a revolution, but guides, redeemers, and benefactors, obeying the almighty effort and advancing on chaos and the dark. Chaos spelled with a capital C, dark spelled with a capital D. This was on courage. Now, the next part is a poem by Robert Frost called The Road Not Taken. Courage does not follow rutted pathways. In other words, you're not going to find a well-beaten path for your courage to traverse, to walk. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. What he's saying is that When he acted with courage, he had a better life. It has made all the difference. And a better life can be judged in the heart, not just on the surface. I had a long talk with my cousin yesterday, and we talked a bit about my plans if I were to have a problem in my demise. And it was only because I had a message in my email that sent me to start to transcribe all of the things about, okay, where is my, if I'm incapacitated, where's my DNR? So after a while, he writes back to me, we're texting this. He says, you're scaring me with all of this advanced directive stuff. And I wrote back with a heart. I know, right? I don't feel like I'm old enough to deal with this social security stuff. And I just kept on writing and writing. But then I noticed that after a while, I was writing to him the things that he should know about. And then I was realizing it's funny that I don't tell him these things until it's really, really, really necessary. And then I thought, shouldn't he already have known all this stuff? He was my cousin after all. He is my cousin. So, there. Okay, we shall read one more. Oh, I already read this one. I already read this one. Here. Oh, I can't pronounce that. I can't read that. I can't pronounce it. No. I said I couldn't pronounce it. Okay, Leo Tolstoy. Where love is, God is. This one is on compassion. The first one was on honesty. The second were on courage. Excuse me. No, I don't have tuberculosis. Who said that? Leo Tolstoy says, where love is, God is. The editor says, this is a reworking of an old Christian folk tale. Its charm lies in its simplicity, and it remains a favorite Tolstoy selection, despite its moralism. In a little town in Russia, there lived a cobbler, Martin Avedievich. God, why do I pick these? By name. He had a tiny room in a basement, the one window of which looked out onto the street. Through it, one could see only the feet of those who passed by. But Martin recognized the people by their boots. He had lived long in the place and had many acquaintances. There was hardly a pair of boots in the neighborhood that had not been once or twice through his hands, so he often saw his own handiwork through the window. Some he had resoled, some he patched, resoled as in S-O-L-E-D. Some patched, some stitched up, and to some he had even put fresh uppers. He had plenty to do, for he worked well, he used good material, did not charge too much, and could be relied on. If he could do a job by the day required, he undertook it. If not, he told the truth and gave no false promises. So he was well known and never short of work. Martin had always been a good man, but in his old age he began to think more about his soul and to draw nearer to God. From that time, Martin's whole life changed. His life became peaceful and joyful. He sat down to his task in the morning, and when he had finished his day's work, he took the lamp down from the wall, stood it on the table, fetched his Bible from the shelf, opened it, and sat down to read. The more he read, the better he understood, and the clearer and happier he felt in his mind. It happened once that Martin sat up late, absorbed in his book. He was reading Luke's Gospel, and in the 6th chapter he came upon the verses, To him that smiteth thee on the one cheek, offer also the other. And from him that taketh away thy cloak, withhold not thy coat also. Give to every man that asketh thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods ask them not again. And as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. He thought about this and was about to go to bed, but was loath to leave his book. So he went on reading the seventh chapter about the centurion, the widow's son, and the answer to John's disciples. And he came to the part where a rich Pharisee invited the Lord to his house. And he read how the woman who was a sinner anointed his feet and washed them with her tears, and how he justified her. Coming to the 44th verse, he read, And turning to the woman, he said unto Simon, Seest thou this woman? I entered into thine house, thou gavest me no water for my feet. Excuse me. But she hath wetted my feet with her tears, and wiped them with her hair. Thou gavest me no kiss, but she, since the time I came in, hath not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but she hath anointed my feet with ointment. He read these verses and thought, He gave no water for his feet, gave no kiss, his head with oil he did not anoint. And Martin took off his spectacles once more, laid them on his book, and pondered. He must have been like me, that Pharisee. He too thought only of himself. How to get a cup of tea, how to keep warm and comfortable, never a thought of his guest. He took care of himself. But for his guest he cared nothing at all. Yet, who was the guest? The Lord himself. If he came to me, should I behave like that? Then Martin laid his head upon both arms, and before he was aware of it, he fell asleep. Martin! He suddenly heard a voice as if someone had breathed the word above his ear. He started from his sleep. Who's there? He asked. He turned around and looked at the door. No one was there. He called again. Then he heard quite distinctly, Martin, Martin, look out into the street tomorrow, for I shall come. Martin roused himself, rose from his chair, and rubbed his eyes, but did not know whether he had heard these words in a dream or awake. He put out the lamp and lay down to sleep. The next morning he rose before daylight, and after saying his prayers, he lit the fire and prepared his cabbage soup and buckwheat porridge. Then he lit the samovar, put on his apron, and sat down by the window to his work. No, I don't know what a samovar is, sorry. He looked out into the street more than he worked, and whenever anyone passed in unfamiliar boots, he would stoop and look up, so as to see not only the feet, but the face of the passerby as well. A house porter passed in new felt boots. The house porter passed in new felt boots, then a water carrier. Presently, an old soldier of Nicholas's reign came near the window, spade in hand. Martin knew him by his boots, which were shabby old felt ones, galoshed with leather. The old man was called Stepanich. A neighboring tradesman kept him in his house for charity, and his duty was to help the house porter. He began to clear away the snow before Martin's window. Martin glanced at him and then went on with his work. After he had made a dozen stitches, he felt drawn to look out of the window again. He saw that Stepanich had leaned his spade against the wall and was either resting himself or trying to get warm. The man was old and broken down, and evidently not enough strength even to clear away the snow. What if I called him in and gave him some tea? Thought Martin. The samovar is just on the boil. He stuck his awl in its place, AWL. He rose and, putting the samovar on the table, made tea. Then he tapped the window with his fingers. Stepanich turned and came to the window. Martin beckoned to him to come in and went himself to open the door. Come in, he said, and warm yourself a bit. I'm sure you must be cold. May God bless you, Stepanich answered. My bones do ache, to be sure. He came in first shaking off the snow, and lest he should leave marks on the floor, he began wiping his feet. But as he did so, he tottered and nearly fell. Don't trouble to wipe your feet, said Martin. I'll wipe up the floor. It's all in the day's work. Come, friend, sit down and have some tea. I have to say, there was one time I was a guest in somebody's house. We were skiing, and it was snow, and we were sweaty, and they allowed us to shower before we had lunch together. It was their second ski house. And so I took my shower and I got ready and I put on my shoes again and I saw this big smudge on the floor, big black smudge. It was about an inch square to maybe 2 inches in diameter. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, they have people to clean that. And I left. Well, come time to have lunch, my my host's husband gave me a dirty look after coming up from downstairs where I had taken my shower. I thought to myself, gee, I wonder why he did that. But now I look back, which people are those? It's us, right? Filling 2 tumblers, he passed one to his visitor and, pouring his own tea out into the saucer, began to blow on it. Stepanich emptied his glass and, turning it upside down, put the remains of his piece of sugar on the top. He began to express his thanks, but it was plain that he would be glad of some more. Have another glass, said Martin, refilling the visitor's tumbler and his own. But while he drank his tea, Martin kept looking out into the street. Are you expecting anyone? Asked the visitor. Am I expecting anyone? Well, now, I'm ashamed to tell you. It isn't that I really expect anyone, but I heard something last night which I can't get out of my mind. Whether it was a vision or only a fancy, I can't tell. You see, friend, last night I was reading the gospel about Christ the Lord, how he suffered and how he walked on earth. You have heard tell of it, I dare say. I have heard tell of it, answered Stepanich, but I'm an ignorant man and not able to read. Well, you see, I was reading how he walked on earth. I came to that part, where he went to a Pharisee who did not receive him well. Well, friend, as I read about it, I thought how that man did not receive Christ the Lord with proper honor. Suppose such a thing could happen to such a man as myself, I thought. What would I not do to receive him? But that man gave him no reception at all. Well, friend, as I was thinking of this, I began to doze, and as I dozed, I heard someone call me by name. I got up. I thought I heard someone whispering, expect me. I will come tomorrow. This happened twice over, and to tell you the truth, it sank so into my mind that, though I am ashamed of it myself, I keep on expecting him, the dear Lord. Stepanich shook his head in silence, finished his tumbler, and laid it on its side, but Martin stood it up again and refilled it for him. Thank you, Martin Avedievich, he said. You have given me food and comfort, both for soul and body. You're very welcome. Come again another time. I am glad to have a guest, said Martin. Stepanich went away, and Martin poured out the last of the tea and drank it up. Then he put away the tea things and sat down to his work, stitching the back seam of a boot. And as he stitched, he kept looking out of the window and thinking about what he had read in the Bible, and his head was full of Christ's sayings. 2 soldiers went by, one in government boots, the other in boots of his own. Then the master of a neighboring house in shining galoshes. Then a baker carrying a basket. All these passed on. Then a woman came up in worsted stockings and peasant-made shoes. She passed the window, but stopped by the wall. Martin glanced up at her through the window and saw that she was a stranger, poorly dressed and with a baby in her arms. She stopped by the wall with her back to the wind, trying to wrap the baby up, though she had hardly anything to wrap it in. The woman had only summer clothes on, and even they were shabby and worn. Through the window Martin heard the baby crying, and the woman trying to soothe it, but unable to do so. Martin rose, and going out of the door and up the steps, he called to her, "My dear! I say, my dear!" The woman heard and turned around. "Why do you stand out there with the baby in the cold? Come inside. You can wrap him up better in a warm place. Come this way." The woman was surprised to see an old man in an apron with spectacles on his nose calling to her, but she followed him in. Then they went down the steps, entered the little room, and the old man led her to the bed. "There, sit down, my dear, near the stove. Warm yourself and feed the baby." "Haven't any milk. I have eaten nothing myself since early morning," said the woman, but still she took the baby to her breast. Martin shook his head. He brought out a basin and some bread. Then he opened the oven door and poured some cabbage soup into the basin. He took out the porridge pot also, but the porridge was not yet ready, so he spread a cloth on the table and served only the soup and bread. "Sit down and eat, my dear, I'll mind the baby." "Why, bless me, I've had children of my own, and I know how to manage them." The woman crossed herself and sitting down at the table began to eat, while Martin put the baby on the bed and sat down by it. Martin sighed. "Haven't you any warmer clothing?" he asked. "How could I get warm clothing?" said she. "Why, I pawned my last shawl for 6 pence yesterday." Then the woman came and took the child, and Martin got up. He went and looked among some things that were hanging on the wall and brought back an old cloak. "Here," he said, though it's a worn-out old thing, it will do to wrap him up in." The woman looked at the cloak, then at the old man, and taking it, burst into tears. Martin turned away, and groping under the bed, brought out a small trunk. He fumbled about in it, and again sat down opposite the woman. And the woman said, "The Lord bless you, friend." "Take this, for Christ's sake," said Martin, and gave her 6 pence to get a shawl out of pawn. The woman crossed herself, and Martin did the same, and then he saw her out. After a while, Martin saw an apple woman stop just in front of his window. On her back she had a sack full of chips, which she was taking home. No doubt she had gathered them at some place where building was going on. The sack evidently hurt her, and she wanted to shift it from one shoulder to the other, so she put it down on the footpath, and placing her basket on a post, began to shake down the chips in the sack. While she was doing this, a boy in a tattered cap ran up, snatched an apple out of the basket, and tried to slip away, but the old woman noticed it and turning caught the boy by his sleeve. He began to struggle, trying to free himself, but the old woman held on with both hands, knocked his cap off his head, and seized hold of his hair. The boy screamed, and the old woman scolded. Martin dropped his awl, not waiting to stick it in its place, and rushed out of the door. Stumbling up the steps and dropping his spectacles in his hurry, he ran out into the street. The old woman was pulling the boy's hair and scolding him and threatening to take him to the police. The lad was struggling and protesting, saying, "I did not take it. What are you beating me for? Let me go." Martin separated them. He took the boy by the hand and said, "Let him go, Granny. Forgive him for Christ's sake." "I'll pay him out so that he won't forget it for a year. I'll take the rascal to the police." Martin began entreating the old woman. "Let him go, Granny. He won't do it again." The old woman let go, and the boy wished to run away, but Martin stopped him. "Ask the granny for forgiveness," said he, "and don't do it another time. I saw you take the apple." The boy began to cry and to beg pardon. "That's right, and now here's an apple for you," said Martin, took an apple from the basket and gave it to the boy, saying, "I will pay you, Granny." "You will spoil them that way, the young rascals," said the old woman. "He ought to be whipped so that he should remember it for a week." "Oh, Granny, Granny," said Martin, "that's our way, but it's not God's way. If he should be whipped for stealing an apple, what should be done to us for our sins?" The old woman was silent. And Martin told her the parable of the Lord who forgave his servant a large debt, and how the servant went out and seized his debtor by the throat. The old woman listened to it all, and the boy too stood by and listened. God bids us to forgive, said Martin, or else we shall not be forgiven. Forgive everyone, and a thoughtless youngster most of all. The old woman wagged her head and sighed. It's true enough, said she, but they are getting terribly spoiled. Then we old ones must show them better ways, Martin replied. That's just what I say, said the old woman. I have had 7 of them myself, and only 1 daughter is left. And the old woman began to tell how and where she was living with her daughter, and how many grandchildren she had. There now, she said, I have but little strength left, yet I work hard for the sake of my grandchildren, and nice children they are, too. No one comes out to meet me but the children. Little Annie now won't leave me for anyone. It's grandmother, dear grandmother, darling grandmother. And the old woman completely softened at the thought. Of course it was only his childishness, said she, referring to the boy. As the old woman was about to hoist her sack on her back, the lad sprang forward to her, saying, Let me carry it for you, Granny. I'm going that way. The old woman nodded her head and put the sack on the boy's back, and they went down the street together, the old woman quite forgetting to ask Martin to pay for the apple. Martin stood and watched them as they went along, talking to each other. When they were out of sight, Martin went back to the house. Having found his spectacles unbroken on the steps, he picked up his awl and sat down again to work. He worked a little, but soon could not see to pass the bristle through the holes in the leather, and presently he noticed the lamplighter passing on his way to light the street lamps. Seems it's time to light up, thought he. So he trimmed his lamp, hung it up, and sat down again to work. He finished off one boot and, turning it about, examined it. It was all right. Then he gathered his tools together, swept up the cuttings, put away the bristles and the thread and the awls, and taking down the lamp, placed it on the table. Then he took the Gospels from the shelf. He meant to open them at the place he had marked the day before with a bit of morocco, but the book opened at another place. As Martin opened it, his yesterday's dream came back to his mind, and no sooner had he thought of it than he seemed to hear footsteps, as though someone were moving behind him. Martin turned round, and it seemed to him as if people were standing in the dark corner, but he could not make out who they were, and a voice whispered in his ear, Martin, Martin, don't you know me? Who is it? muttered Martin. It is I, said the voice, and out of the dark corner stepped Stepanich, who smiled, and vanishing like a cloud was seen no more. It is I, said the voice again, and out of the darkness stepped the woman with a baby in her arms, and the woman smiled, and the baby laughed, and they too vanished. It is I, said the voice one more, and the old woman and the boy with the apple stepped out, and both smiled, and then they too vanished. Then Martin's soul grew glad. He crossed himself, put on his spectacles, and began reading the Gospel just where it had opened, and at the top of the page he read, I was hungry, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. And at the bottom of the page he read, Inasmuch as ye did it unto one of these my brethren, even these least, ye did it unto me. And Martin understood that his dream had come true, and that the Savior had really come to him that day, and he had welcomed him. So, you know, this is often a good story. Okay, so, boy, oh boy, it was a longer day than usual, huh? I will say that we have had a great day of reading of virtue, and we spanned the world. We spanned somewhere in East Asia, somewhere in Middle Europe, and somewhere in Russia. So that's a pretty far away place for me. I've never been there. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow, and I think tomorrow is a rules day, hoop earrings and all. Okay, old Kinderhook.